Hello and welcome to this quick little piano tutorial video. This video will be just a quick primer and introduction to the keyboard, the notes, the natural notes, the sharp and the flat notes, how they work together, how do they work in scales and in chords, and through the whole half, the major scale pattern as well. Okay. So let's start with the white keys. The white keys all have their own names. Well, actually, before we get to the white keys, let's start with the black keys, actually. If you have noticed that there's a pattern of black keys. There's 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, all the way up and down the whole keyboard. The black keys alternate between groups of 3 and 2. And that's important because that is how we tell the white notes apart, actually. Surrounding the group of 2 black notes are the notes C, D, and E, and this piano is out of tune, so sorry about that. Surrounding the group of 3 black notes is the other 4 notes, F, G, A, B. And then, well, since the black notes alternate between groups of 3 and 2, that means that those groups of 3 and 4 white notes alternate as well. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, etc., etc., etc. And the white notes also from C to C constitute the major scale in the key of C. And it's really nice because the groups of black notes clearly show the whole half pattern that makes the major scale. You can see between C and E, there's a black note in between, which means there's a half step between this white note and this black note. There's a half step between the black note and this white note. That's 2 half steps. That's 1 whole step. And the first step in a major scale is a whole step. And you can see there's another black note right there, which means there's 2 more half steps. Whole. And because there's no black note here, which means that's just 1 half step. Whole, half. All right. That major scale pattern works in all keys. And now that we've talked about the names of the white keys, now we can talk about the names of the black keys. Maybe something that's important to know in the way that I teach it is that the black notes don't actually have their own names. A lot of people call them the sharp and the flat notes, but that's kind of wrong because any note on the keyboard can be sharp and flat. What sharp means is that you are just raising the pitch by a half step in the upward direction to the right on the keyboard. Sharp that note and it becomes a black note. If you sharp this black note, then it becomes a white note. So if you sharp that C note, it can become C sharp, but if you sharp C sharp, it can either become C double sharp, which is a special case that we won't ever see in worship music, double sharps, or it could just be D. And the same goes for flats, right? So flatting is reducing the pitch, moving to the left on the keyboard by 1 half step at a time. If you flat C, then that will be either the key C flat or B, depending on the context. If you're in the key of C flat, well, the first note has to be C flat, which is that one. And the key of C flat is also the same. It's also the same keys that you play on the keyboard as the key of B major, which makes sense because this note can either be named B as a natural note or C flat as a flat note. All right. I know I kind of skipped over double sharps and double flats. That's not important to worship music, so we're not going to worry about it here. Anyway, so sharps, it's just moving up by a half step. Flat is just moving down by a half step. So it's not about being a black key or a white key. It's about what is that note doing? Is it moving up? Is it moving down by a half step? It's either a sharp or a flat note. And whether or not you call it a sharp or a flat note depends on the context of the key. Okay. So let's look at a couple different keys, and we've already kind of seen one with the key of C flat, and how the white and the black notes kind of interact a little bit. So the key of D is a nice one to start off with. There's two sharps in the key of D, and around the circle of fifths, sharps and flats always occur in a consistent pattern. And there's different acronyms that you can come up with to remember that. But the first sharp in any key is F sharp. And the second sharp is C sharp. And since D has two sharps, those are the two sharps that it has to have. So the key of D is D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. Now, for the key F sharp and the key that we're calling F sharp and the key that we're calling C sharp, why aren't we calling it G flat? Because it could be. Because if you flat G flat, it's the same key. So why do we call it F sharp? Remember the rules of the major scale. Remember the rules of any scale, really. You can't skip over a note, which means you can't skip over a letter name, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, sharp or flat, it doesn't matter. You can't skip over any letter name, and you can't duplicate or have more than one of the same letter name in a scale. So if we were going to play the key of D, but we wanted to call this G flat, D, E, G flat, well then we're skipping over the note name F. And that causes a problem because rule number 2, you can't have a duplicate. If you've decided that you want to call that G flat, then you can't really call this G anymore. It has to be A double flat. And you can't call this A anymore because this is already called A. This has to be A double flat. So you've thrown off your entire, the note names in the scale. And by the time you get back to D, you can't call that D anymore because you've already named this D flat. So it causes problems for you if you don't know how to name the black notes or how to name the sharp and the flat notes more specifically in a key signature or in a chord. Like if you were going to play just a D chord and you didn't know that rule about sharp and flat notes and scales and duplicating note names and having every note name. If you didn't know those rules and you played the D chord, but you didn't know about sharp notes, for instance, and you thought that this was just G flat, then you would spell the D major chord D, G flat, and A, which doesn't fit into any key signature. And it doesn't make any sense because it doesn't fit into any key signature. It doesn't fit into any scale. That chord doesn't make any sense in any scale because you've spelled it wrong. It's like spelling a word wrong. If you spell the word there, like if you're trying to say the contraction they are, but you just say there, if that's the word and the meaning that you want to convey, then you have to make sure that you spell it as a contraction. They apostrophe R-E. But if you spell it there, T-H-E-I-R, as a possessive, then you've misspelled the word and you've caused confusion. That's like misspelling chords, and chords are like misspelling words. I kind of teach it that way anyway. So knowing how to name the black notes is really important. It fits into the context of a key signature, it fits into the context of a scale, and it fits into the context of all of the other chords that will exist within that key signature in that scale. So I think that's everything that I wanted to explain in this video. That's the basics of the keyboard, the names of the white notes, the groups of 2 and 3 black notes, which notes follow from those groups, which notes surround those black note groups, which white notes surround those black note groups. Very specific. How sharps and flats work: it's sharp moving up by a half step, flat moving down by a half step. Sharp and flat does not mean black note, because that note could be F or it could be E sharp. And that note could be C or it could be B sharp. And that note could be C double sharp or E double flat. You know, any note on the keyboard can be sharp or flat. It doesn't matter whether it's a white note or a black note. It's a big misconception. And in the context of key signatures and scales, that's important when you go to spell chords, because if you misspell a chord, you will cause confusion to the person who you are trying to communicate that to. Say if you're writing down your own chord chart and you say, you know, that the D major chord has a G flat in it, then whoever is reading that will be confused, and they won't understand what kind of chord you're trying to tell them to play, because it's misspelled.